The title of this video, Eggshells with Hammers, might be familiar to some of you with a knowledge of relatively modern naval combat. But for those who enjoy a bit of theory crafting in Star Citizen, it forms a really interesting lens with which to view the potential for combat as the game develops, and potential ways to balance the competing interests and priorities of different groups. I'm Farrister, and in this video we'll explore a little bit of theory crafting about potential vulnerability of ships in game and why carefully managed and balanced vulnerability could be a good thing for gameplay. Since this is a channel that usually focuses on what's currently in game, the speculation involved in this theory crafting is a little wander away from the norm, so it's important to say, obviously, these are just my thoughts, things may turn out different, and you can also share your thoughts in the comments as we go along. So, the armchair game designer premise of this video is that warships in-game should find the balance of being powerful and also vulnerable. That's where the eggshells with hammers quote comes in. The phrase eggshells with hammers is often attributed to Winston Churchill speaking as First Lord of the Admiralty in World War I. Churchill is reported as saying, "The true picture of a battle between modern battleships is not men in armour striking with heavy swords, but a battle between two eggshells striking each other with hammers." That's a theme that crops up again and again, from carrier battles in the Second World War showing the vulnerability of large ships to aircraft, to more modern engagements showing the vulnerability of large ships to anti-ship missiles. This is the important first premise that we might translate to Star Citizen, that even the biggest of warships can be vulnerable to a much smaller threat if not properly protected. That creates a somewhat unique challenge in Star Citizen, however, and that's one of balance. Modern navies that choose to take the risk of deploying big vulnerable warships also take steps to manage that risk by deploying them with various layers of defense, which we'll come to shortly. But they also don't have to manage the disparity in play experience. They're there to achieve a goal, and if that makes them overpowered, frankly, that's a good thing for the deploying navy. Star Citizen, however, has to find balance between some of the larger ships that may have multiple people aboard and smaller ships that may be operated by a single pilot, and that's a game design challenge. If an Idris-class frigate with 10 players aboard is far less effective than everybody taking out single-seater fighters, then there's no reason for people to take out an Idris. And if it's so easily destroyed as to send all 10 players back to the hangar, people may not want to risk getting aboard. Equally, if a single-seater, no matter how skilled, doesn't even have the potential to dent such a large warship, then it discourages engagements. So Star Citizen needs to find a balance, and that's where the concept of planned vulnerability could be used. My concept of this is simple. There are two main types of firepower that are deployed by ships in Star Citizen. The first is what I'll call conventional firepower. That's the lasers, ballistics, the main weapons aboard the ship. They do damage that chip away over time and are mitigated by shields and armour. The threat of small guns against big ships is tiny, manageable, and operates as a default reason why bigger ships can be stronger and safer. But it also leaves room for large caliber weapons to be a potent threat for larger ships, like the railgun on the Idris for example. The second weapon type would be missiles and torpedoes. Missiles and torpedoes, depending on the size deployed, would have a much bigger impact than the conventional weapons. A small missile would do catastrophic damage to a fighter. A small torpedo would do catastrophic damage to a medium-sized ship, and a large torpedo would do catastrophic damage to a capital ship. But they wouldn't be guaranteed damage in the same way that conventional firepower is, and that's because skill could play a part in avoiding the deathly impact. Incidentally, for any of you who have watched the Battlestar Galactica reboot from the early 2000s, this is a similar sort of idea to the flak versus nukes versus cannons meta, and gave a reason for launching fighters to help protect larger ships. A modern anti-ship missile could cause catastrophic damage to a warship. That's been seen in many instances where they've made a connecting blow, such as HMS Sheffield, USS Stark, and more recently the Moskva cruiser. But these warships still deploy to combat zones despite the risk, because they try to put systems in place to protect themselves. These could range from stealth technologies to avoid detection, electronic warfare to confuse the targeting, less technological countermeasures to spoof targeting such as chaff or flares, the ability to shoot down incoming munitions, heavy armor to absorb the damage from smaller warheads, or even simply fast speed to evade. And that's before the concept of defense in depth, with overlapping defenses from a team of ships working together. All of these concepts could apply also to Star Citizen, giving an element of player skill to combat the threat of highly damaging munitions. Incidentally, if you are alarmed by the idea of missiles doing catastrophic damage to a single-seater fighter, that's the same mitigation strategy. Drop chaff or flares and evade the missile as a skill check to avoid the damage. Applied to a larger warship, this could be players in turrets, players in fighters, automated point defense turrets, or smart electronic warfare, to name but a few examples. This sort of mechanic could allow players to feel heroic in isolation, with the potential for a well-timed or sneaky attack to do brutal damage, but also to reward good team play and give a well-coordinated team options to defend themselves. There are another couple of similarities. The first is the ability for larger ships to absorb a level of damage, even serious damage, and conduct in-flight repairs to try and get back to a dockyard for proper fixing up. That creates gameplay for attacker and defender, with the defending crew trying to fix things up whilst protecting the ship, and the attacker trying to make good their kill, or even potentially to try and board the victim. The other similarity is the inclusion of escape pods on larger ships for when the situation becomes untenable. The ship might be uninhabitable due to the damage, and so the crew can abandon the hull to save themselves. With Death of a Spaceman mechanics, that could be an important trade-off that players choose to make. There are some differences, however, that make the comparison a little tougher. The first is the threat of sinking, which doesn't exist in space. Warships that take on too much damage risk taking on water and then drifting to the bottom. But for warships in space, other than explosively critical damage, that just leaves a hulk out in space that potentially, depending on the damage, could be repairable. Obviously, planet-side engagements may be riskier for large ships, especially those not wanting to share the fate of the Flisser. The obvious other difference is the respawn and replenishment mechanics that exist in video games that doesn't exist for real warships. Both attackers and defenders in naval confrontations attach at least some value to human life, not always, but very often. Sailors and pilots are not easily replaced, but in a video game context, that's not true, as players can respawn fairly easily, maybe even being able to rejoin the same fight. That means that even with Death of a Spaceman mechanics, many players may not value their character's life, which can lead to unusual or unexpected behaviours. Still, the idea of having two layers to combat, the conventional, which is more attritional, and the missile base, which is more all or nothing, and all of the attached gameplay to defend against those risks, to me is quite exciting. But then, I'm just a random space guy who is excited about the possibilities in Star Citizen. I've shared some of my thoughts, so I'll be interested to read some of your thoughts in the video comments. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel but would like YouTube to show you more videos like this, then you might want to press that subscribe button, and if you thought this video was interesting or thought-provoking, then pressing the like button will give me the prompt to make more videos like this in future. Otherwise, and as always, thank you for watching.